Well, back to armour today as promised. I think I mentioned, I can't remember, I've actually found my first ever piece of armour that I ever made. I'll try and do a little comparison of what's wrong with it perhaps, or what I've learned or whatever in the next one. But here we are. This is a gauntlet I'm working on at the moment. It's based on an English style, but you know, you see these sort of gauntlets all through the 14th century in all manner of places. And what I wanted to talk about really was this bit here. If we can see that, let me just get that up. This plate, the rider plate, and what I think it's for. Again, as I've mentioned before, we don't really know because we weren't left any manuals. They didn't say what things were for. You sometimes see an extra little plate down here on the thumb, but I'm going to talk about this one here, the knuckle rider plate. Now, these aren't made for me, but we have similar hands. And I've got to put some straps in here, and I think we're about to be joined by the ship's cat. Hello, you. So all the while he's not getting in the way, we'll keep him here. This is Cooper the cat. Right, so what you can see is when I clench my fist, very needy cat this one, when I clench my hand, look, the plate articulates. And I think that's its principle function, is it gives a expansion to the fingers. Now the fingers on gauntlets are made a bit longer than your own fingers anyway, obviously, otherwise you tear your fingernails off when you clench. But what this does is it just gives that extra bit of movement. Now what I say when I'm working with kids and things like this is, see all these folds in the skin that we have here, our skin doesn't necessarily stretch. It doesn't. It's not as elastic, I think, as we're led to believe. Certainly not at my age. But on complicated things like the fingers, what you have is all these folds of skin here are what allow the expansion and contraction of the skin, or the finger rather, the contraction of the finger, without ripping all of the skin open. All of these folds are extra skin. And if you ever want to see how much extra skin there is there, a quick and silly little thing you can do is you put your fingertip on your knuckle there, and you keep that in there, and then when you bend, keep that bit of your finger stuck together. So you bend the finger around, keep it as tight as you can so you're not cheating, and then now keep this one here, the fingertip there, tight against the finger, and open them out. And I was on my knuckle before, and you can see now, I hope, I was there, I'm now about there. Let me get my fingers done, there you go, from there to about there. So that's how much all of these fingers expand, and you need to have that in the metalwork of the finger of these sorts of gauntlets, because there's not really any, there's kind of contraction there, there's no expansion of the metal can't magically expand in that respect. And I think the rider in this respect, come on Cooper, I think the rider in this respect acts like that expansion. It's like a lame inside a elbow or knee joint, something like that. I'm just going to see if my cat will go downstairs. Will go off the table. He's ever such a needy little beast, this one. He's very nice, but he's very needy. Come on. Oh, there we go. He probably wants some food in a minute, mate. So I think that's firstly and foremost this plate's function. It's held by a couple of rivets here. You can see there's one there and one there. And very often in museums what you'll see is kind of that part of the gauntlet. And if you look for these holes, you can find them, and those are for the rider plate, I guess. I have heard somebody say that they could have been made from leather. They're not always visible like this, sometimes they're a little thin strip, so they might have been made from the leather at some point. We'll just take a look underneath the hood, so to speak. So yeah, so we'll take a look underneath. Now some folk put the gloves into this back bit and they say that's what these rivets are for. I don't know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I personally think you get a nicer movement from the glove if it's a good size like this, the glove, and it stays in there. But you know, I honestly don't know. That's not something I've researched particularly hard. Sometimes these are joint, sometimes it overlaps and you rivet it in. In fact, if you've seen this being made, that's what it was like. But the gauntlet I'm copying or following in this one has a gap there. I think this was a cheat because most hands, unless you're some sort of giant, are about the same sort of size around here. I've got quite small hands, so I'm sort of exception to the rule, but around here they're all more or less the same, particularly among slim folk, as would have been back in the day. So you haven't got the size, the extra size on the wrist. So I think what they probably did was they made bucket loads of these and then just expanded and contracted them as they needed to and held them solid. But I've got no evidence for that. That's just me guessing. Just found a little sharp edge, I've got to get it off. So anyway, on the underside, let's see if we can look inside here and see what this rider plate is actually doing. There we go, I'll hold that up to the camera. So you can see the rider plate here. Where are we? Let's get a pencil. Here we go. So you can see the rider plate there still attached to its rivet on the outside. And that plate runs underneath all of these nails there, along there. I'm doing this sort of upside down and backwards on the screen, so forgive me if it's a bit messy, but you can see 4 there, 1, 2, 3, 4. Not this one here, but these ones there. That one's holding the plate there on. The one underneath, I've put little leather washers on them because they take the most strain, so I like to give them a bit of an extra bit of strength with this little leather washer as well. It saves it tearing out, which they can do over time. So anyway, that's what's going on. I think this is a secondary reason why you see a lot of rider plates in some of this, in a lot of this equipment. If the fingers have become damaged, or the glove needs replacing, or whatever needs to go on, you can take the rider plate off and all of the fingers quite easily by grinding out that rivet. It's there, and the other one there. You grind that off and then the fingers just come off the gauntlet really easily. So I think that's a secondary reason that you see the rider plate appear. On some earlier gauntlets and some later gauntlets, certainly, they seem to attach the fingers directly to this, and you can sometimes see little rivets across there. No evidence at all of the rider plate, and clearly they were, well, I think fairly clearly they were putting the fingers directly onto the gauntlet. I don't know what changed in their thinking. I tend to find, personally, I think a lot of 14th century, mid 14th century armour is possibly really over-engineered, because what you've got to do is you've got to cover a man in steel, so you kind of make a slightly bigger version of it for him to climb into. And they're following form and doing all this sort of stuff. So it looks like a hand, it moves like a hand, it does all those things. But as time goes on, they learn, well, you don't need to be able to articulate necessarily all of your fingers individually as though it was a hand. You know, you're not conducting a light opera or playing an organ here. You're going off the fight. So as long as you can clench and you have that minute control that you need when fighting to control the weapons. Do we need the fingers? I think the evidence is no, you don't. And certainly if you get struck hard across the finger gauntlets aren't as good as some of the broader plated gauntlets that you see, say, from the Italians and the later German stuff. So I don't know, it looks kind of cool though, and English armour does seem to be about things looking cool. That brings me to the last reason I think that rider plates are there, regardless of what's going on. This area around here is quite delicate. Now if a hand is struck, you can see this a lot in the HMB stuff that's going around on YouTube, or just from your own experience. If your hand is struck, we're not strong enough to withstand the force of that blow with the strength of our arms. We just can't do it. So what tends to happen is you get struck, even if it's by surprise, and your hand and arm and everything moves away. So the arm around there can be quite delicate, but it's going to get hit a fair amount. So this bit here, what it does, I think, is it protects all these delicate bits in here, which would otherwise just be exposed leather, to get that articulation, possibly, with these sorts of gauntlets. Like I say, these are just my sort of fan theories, if you like, on what this plate's for. So you can see as it's allowed that expansion, that would otherwise just be leather, and that would be a lot of stuff there. And the overlapping there, you've essentially got 3 layers of material which are protecting you, articulating nicely for you, and adding extra depth and strength to the armour itself. But like I say, it's kind of just a guess. We don't really know what was going through their minds. Sometimes you see 1 or 2 down here. I'll put some pictures throughout this video showing some gauntlets on effigies that have got rider plates, but very often they're not depicted as large as this. I don't know, it'd be a faff carving this into an effigy. Certainly a lot of effigies are shown with their hands up in prayer, but you do see them on some effigies, and I'll make sure I put one or two of those pictures up as we're going along there. So there you go. What I think the rider plate is for is basically manufacture, makes it easier, repair, makes it a lot simpler to repair with that plate there, and a bit of extra protection for you. And finally, and first, I think really the articulation. It gives the expansion that the skin can do so easily. It then puts it into this in metal. Even if it's hidden and never actually peeks past the knuckles, you just make the knuckles a bit bigger. You have a thin strip about the width of this brass that's on there, and that can move backwards and forwards and give you the same expansion, but without showing what's going on there. So there you go, a quick summary. Let's just climb into here. It's still a little bit. What I like to do is put a strap across here. Some people sew them with an extra leather there so that you don't walk out of the glove like that. So I prefer to put a strap. It feels a bit more secure, the way I make things. But there we go. A gauntlet, ready to go for a chat just about with that expanding rider plate. I'm trying to get to the centre of the film is really difficult, upside down and backwards. There it is, with that expanding plate there. So I hope you enjoyed that one. Little brief look at the rider plate and its function, and I'll try and dream up something for number 4, possibly look at some of my early armour, and if not, something else. So there you go. Hope the quarantine's not being too bad for you. Stay safe, and we'll catch you on the flip-flop.